Okay, it's awesome to be on the stage. I've met a lot of you online, but this is actually the first time that I see a lot of you in real life. And I can tell you that's quite a bit of a different thing. But it also shows that the online community is quite powerful, and it's good to be there. But it's also interesting how my story started. And started in the hospital. While my wife was going into labor, the analytics community asked for help with a Flask application. And this was a great opportunity for me to help the community. And we were already playing Rummy Cup for like a full day, and I wanted to do some nerd stuff. So I had to convince my wife that I would be allowed to open my laptop. And you can imagine in the situation in the hospital. Well, she said no, of course. So I had to convince her I would win the next 5 games of Rummy Cup anyway. And yes, it worked out. So I was allowed to open my laptop in the hospital, and I navigated to GitHub, to a repository of Joe Mulberry. Does anyone know him, Joe Mulberry? Oh, okay, yeah, great. I see at least one hand. But there were notebooks, only notebooks. I was like, okay, I'm a developer. I don't really like notebooks, as those are a bit scary. But I started refactoring the code. I just like splitting up the code in logical parts and making sure that things are related to each other in code also belong to each other. But during this process, I noticed that like 80% of the code was about reading and parsing the data. And I'm not really an expert in football analytics, but I believed that's something an expert like Joe Mulberry should not spend his time on. So now you know how it started. Let's look at who I am. So I'm Koen, father of 2 kids, founder of Team TV, part of the PyData Eindhoven committee, and a head coach of a korfball team. And I know a lot of people, of course, know korfball, right? Who knows korfball? Oh, awesome. I expected no one to raise their hand. It's like a Dutch version of basketball. And the great thing is that we, except for 1 year, always win the World Championship. So I'm still hoping it gets Olympic, so we get like a medal for free. And I have a background in software engineering. And this started at the age of 12. My father had a business trip to London, and he bought me Lego Mindstorms. Anyone knows Lego Mindstorms? Okay, yes, awesome. Yeah, that's great. For the people that don't know it, it's like a programmable brick. And yeah, you can attach all kind of stuff, and you can have a software, and you can just drag and drop stuff, and then you can program a robot, for example. But you can also program it with Visual Basic. So my dad gave me a book, Guide to Visual Basic 6, and he said, well, figure it out. And from that moment, I became interested in programming. So now you know I liked to play with Lego. And I'm really interested to see what kind of audience that we have. People don't know korfball, that's fine. But who played with Lego as a child, or still does? Even more people. That's pretty good. And it doesn't really matter if you build by the booklet or use your own imagination. You can always build awesome stuff. But another question: who has ever built their own Lego bricks? No one does, of course not. But the point really is that Lego is configured and designed in such a way that you can be creative in any way you want. from the elements that you can build whatever you want. And the more elements you have, the more possible creations, right? But I'm going to explain how this principle applies to your jobs too, and how thinking about how this works can supercharge you within your organization and might even get you a job at your favorite club. But before we get into solutions, let's talk about problems first. The harsh reality of our jobs is that there are some problems in between the current situation and this bright future. And I've studied this for a couple of years, and I found 3 main problems. That's why we are reinventing those Lego bricks every day. And let's dive into those problems. The illusion of competitive edge. So at the core of football analytics, we all want to build different things. New insights, unique tools that help us with doing better recruitment and having better game outcomes. But the question is this really true? It's really hard to tell because, well, sometimes I think that professional football organizations are even more secret than the MI6 headquarters. It's really hard to get knowledge about what's really happening. And let's consider, for example, the expected goals metric. If you want to implement it, you will probably start with a notebook or some code examples that are online somewhere. But the fact is, most of the people do. They all start with code examples that are publicly available. And from there, if you get it working, that's, I think, the first step, and probably the last step. But not only the expected goals metric is an example, also what I explained in the beginning, like reading and parsing the data. Even today, it's considered a competitive edge if you can read and parse a file. It's not a competitive advantage. Everyone can do it. Then the second one, the do-it-yourself trap. So picture this, you're a performance analyst and you're tasked with visualizing all the successful passes into the box. And you know that your club has event data in XML format. Some clubs do it, it's not JSON, so you're not using StatsBomb, but it's available. Your panic starts a bit in because, well, you're not an XML reader expert, but you start going. So you started using Python element tree. Does it ring a bell for someone? Python element tree? Oh, yeah. Sorry, sometimes you have to do it. But yeah, it doesn't work, and in the end, you find a notebook, and you're lucky. It will solve your issues. But then when you copy-paste all the code, it doesn't work because, well, the notebook was for Python 2, and you're using Python 3, and it's not working. Then you use ChatGPT, not working. But you have to finish it because you started it, and you can do this. So 3 days later, you finally solved it, and it's working. And then the great part starts, the visualization. And you can do this as well using matplotlib. So after a couple of days, you got it all working. But the question is, at what cost? In terms of time and scalability. So it might work for just a single match, but the question is, does it also scale to an entire competition, or even 20 competitions? And the do-it-yourself trap often happens when we underestimate the complexity, or when we think that the existing solutions don't fit our problems. Yes, and then from research to nowhere. And this one makes me a bit sad. Also today, there's a great research track with groundbreaking research. And where does it end? Well, somewhere midway, probably. If you're lucky, you'll find a notebook or repository with some code in it. But where are the plug-and-play variants that we can just import and use it? And there are some exceptions, like Soccer Action, Soccer XG, Fluidlight, excellent tools that you can just import and it works. But the gap between research and application remains quite big. So the community is still quite isolated. So people don't often share knowledge, and it's all fragmented. And this leads to duplicate efforts with just minor differences between implementations. And in the end, this leads to the people with deep knowledge of the sport solving technology issues. And therefore, my question today is, what are we doing? Why do we keep reinventing the wheel and building the same Lego blocks over and over again? What if you could activate the community by adding problems and feedback from professional sports clubs into the Data Fanatics community? And where the Data Fanatics community would work on building more elements that you can use as a performance analyst or a data scientist. And what you build with those elements, that's actually your competitive advantage. And together, we can go faster. And we're already doing this with PySport and others in the community, in the open source football analytics community. So let's show me some examples. But first, let me explain PySport. So PySport is a community where we try to bring data fanatics and professional sports clubs together and making sure that we share knowledge and share best practices. So we have meetups, we have a list of all available open source packages over all sports. We promote different kind of packages like NPL Soccer. And we bring together the experts with the learners and making sure that we get high quality, good maintained open source packages. Yes, demo time. I want to do like an interactive demo, but yeah, it never works. So I just made some screenshots. So I think most of the times the first step is like a data engineering challenge. So how do we structure our data? Where do we store our data? And how can we access the data? And there's a new package. It's called Ingestify. It's not really released yet, but I will just show it over here. And that one will help you with it. So there's a config file. You can just use it, and we'll fetch all the data from, for example, StatsBomb, or from some other provider, which I will not name. And then if you want to use it, for example, in your notebook, you can just tell it, give me the StatsBomb data, competition ID, and season ID, and you will get all the data sets. And I know some people know exactly all competitions by their IDs, so I'm really curious. Does anyone know which competition this is? Okay, we'll find it later on. And then next step, is it readable? Yeah? Okay, cool. One of the important things with tools is that they work together. So they're plug and play. So if you use a tool for reading or storing the data somewhere, it should work together with parsing the data and transforming it to pandas, for example. So in this case, we can just tell it, find a collection of all matches, read it in a multi-processed way, so you don't have to think about scalability, and then convert it to a pandas data frame. And as you can see, it's quite fast. And this is just on my laptop. So you don't need a fancy data warehouse thing. Just pick your laptop and it works. You can read it from S3 or somewhere else. It's pretty easy. And then, using DuckDB. Anyone has used DuckDB before? Yeah. Okay. SQL? Was there ever written SQL query? Okay, some more people. Okay, so DuckDB is an in-process analytics database. So you don't have to install some sort of database. You can just use it within your Python code and run a query. And in this case, I'm running the query directly on the pandas data frame. So again, this is quite fast, running on all the data. And then the insights that you get is, well, in this case, a table with some stuff. But yeah, I have a background in Corval, so I can imagine you would come up with better queries to find interesting insights. But I also work together with Jan from Club Brugge to have an actual example that they use. They use NPL Soccer for it, and I rebuild it with some tools. So what they have is a tool to do the recovery map, so on which third of the pitch teams will recover the ball. And just rebuild it with some tools. So again, we read the data, same competition. It's not the Pro League, but this is the Women's League. Same stuff there. And this is an interesting one, because in this case, what I also think is quite important when you have a data set that you can use chaining. So you read the data, do another operation on it, and then another one, and then do some filtering, and then you translate it to a data frame. And in this case, I think the only really important thing is how the definition of a recovery is in the code. So that's where, in the filter, if there's an event where the previous team is not the same as the current team. And that's how, in this example, I define an recovery. So the data looks like this. There are like 7,000 data points. This is like copy pasta from the NPL Soccer tutorial page. I had to change some minor things, but you can just find it. You don't have to make this up yourself. And then in the end, it will look like this. So with just a few lines of code, you can go from raw data, read and parse it, and visualize it if you use the existing tools. And you don't have to build everything yourself. Just do pip install or conda install, and you have it working. So now let's wrap this up and make my final point. So PySport connect a community of data fanatics to the analysts from professional football sports organizations. So we can all focus on the things that we're really good at. So now let's look around and introduce yourself to the people next to you and talk about the problems and issues that you have and how to solve it together. Because wouldn't it be great if you can share all the knowledge that's here in this room? Wouldn't we be able to do some great things together? And that's what we're building. So if you like it, join the Football Analytics open source community. Thank you.